Tonight, a quiet man from Ikpoba Hill makes one choice that changes everything. A jealous husband, a beautiful wife, and a secret society with a price nobody wants to pay. When the drums start, will he run or open the door? Welcome to Tales at Dusk, the archive of rich African tales. In the heart of Ikpoba Hill, Benin City, there lived a man named Esosa, a civil servant in his early 40s, a man whose life seemed to revolve around routines and the quiet humdrum of his work at the local government office. His life, from the outside, seemed relatively normal. He had a steady job, a modest home, and a wife who was the envy of many. But beneath the surface of this mundane life, Esosa was a man consumed by an inner turmoil he could not escape. He lived with his wife, Isosa, a strikingly beautiful woman in her early 30s, whose allure seemed to draw admiration from every corner of their community. Her beauty wasn't just skin-deep. Her kindness, her grace, and her laughter made her unforgettable. However, it was this very beauty that drove Esosa to the brink of madness. Isosa worked as a messenger in the office of the local government chairman, a position that, on paper, seemed menial. But for Esosa, it was a source of constant anxiety. His mind played tricks on him, always conjuring images of his wife's beauty being the reason why the chairman often called on her. He was sure that there was something more going on, something hidden beneath the surface. Esosa was consumed by jealousy. He believed that Isoke's proximity to the chairman meant she was involved in a relationship with him. Though Isoke loved him dearly, and he knew it, the thought that she might be with another man, especially the chairman, gnawed at him like an unshakable shadow. Every time she came home late from work, every time she mentioned the chairman in passing, Esosa's mind would race with unfounded accusations. His voice would rise in anger. "Why are you so close to this man? What do you have with him? Don't lie to me." Isoke, with her gentle nature, would sigh and try to calm him. "Esosa, it's just work." But Esosa was far from convinced. He could never shake the thought that his wife, the woman he cherished, was slipping away, drawn to the powerful man who could give her things he never could. Isoke's beauty, her charm, it was all too much for him to bear. Each time she tried to explain, it only seemed to make him more convinced that she was hiding something. He felt inferior, unworthy of her love. His jealousy turned into a venomous obsession that clouded every thought and every moment they spent together. One evening, after a particularly heated argument, Esosa sat alone in their modest living room, staring into the dim light of the lamp. His mind raced with frustration. How could he ever compete with the chairman? What did he have to offer her that could match the power and influence the chairman wielded? He felt hopeless, powerless in the face of a world he could not control. His insecurities were eating away at him, and he needed a solution. A quick fix, something that could rid him of his fears, his inadequacies. Wealth, power. If he could only have that, if he could only rise above the ordinary, then maybe, just maybe, he could command the same respect the chairman had. He believed that wealth would make him worthy of his wife's love, that it would make him strong enough to stand tall in the world. But Esosa was no fool. He knew that wealth did not come easily. He worked as a civil servant, earning a modest salary, and no amount of hard work in his current job would ever bring him the riches he craved. His desperation grew, and in the shadows of his thoughts, a dangerous idea began to form, an idea that would change everything. The tension in Esosa's home had reached a fever pitch. His words and suspicions had built an invisible wall between him and Isoke. Even though she continued to play the dutiful wife, cooking his meals, greeting him softly each evening, her eyes had begun to dull. The laughter that once filled their home had become a memory. But Esosa's pride wouldn't let him stop. He felt he had to prove himself, to his wife, to the world, and to that ever-present shadow in his mind, the chairman. Then, one humid Wednesday afternoon, fate took a turn. As Esosa was leaving the civil service office after closing hours, a black Lexus SUV slowed beside him. The tinted window rolled down halfway, revealing a familiar face. Esosa. My brother. It was Osagi, his former colleague and old friend. The last time Esosa had seen Osagi was 2 years earlier, right after Osagi had suddenly resigned from the civil service. Rumor had it that he had landed a business deal that changed his life, but no one knew exactly what kind of business it was. Osagi looked completely transformed. His skin glowed with confidence, his wrist glittered with a gold watch, and his clothes screamed wealth. Osagi, Esosa exclaimed, forcing a smile. Ah, long time. I didn't even recognize you again. Osagi laughed heartily. You wouldn't, my brother. Life has been good. Get in. Let's talk. Inside the car, the sweet scent of air freshener mixed with leather. The seats were soft and luxurious, nothing like the rickety chairs in Esosa's office. Osagi drove toward an upscale bar in GRA, Benin City. Esosa felt slightly out of place there. Men in suits sipped expensive whiskey, and the waiters bowed slightly when they approached their tables. Over drinks, Osagi leaned closer. You still in that government job? Yes, Esosa replied. It's not easy, but we thank God. Osagi chuckled softly. Thank God indeed. But you and I know that civil service won't take you anywhere. The salary can't even buy peace of mind. Talk less of respect. The words stung Esosa more than he cared to admit. Osagi continued. Do you remember how we used to complain back then? I told you I couldn't keep living that way. Now look at me. He spread his arms proudly. Esosa swallowed hard. Osagi, tell me the truth. How did you do it? You left the office and now you're shining. Which business did you start? Osagi smiled mysteriously. It's not just business, my brother. Let's say I joined a circle of men who understand that power and wealth come from beyond what you see. Esosa frowned. Circle of men? Osagi lowered his voice. It's called Igbesu. The name sent a chill down Esosa's spine. He had heard whispers of such groups before, men who drove flashy cars, built mansions overnight, but whose eyes carried something dark. He laughed nervously. Ah, Osagi, you don't mean it. Those things are dangerous. I hear people pay with their souls. Osagi's smile didn't fade. Only cowards call it dangerous. My brother, nothing good comes cheap. Even the Bible says, faith without works is dead. Igbesu just teaches us how to make our faith work faster. Esosa tried to change the topic, but the thought lingered like smoke in his head. That night, as he lay beside Isoke, who was already asleep, he couldn't stop replaying Osagi's words. Nothing good comes cheap. Faith must work faster. He thought of all his frustrations, the slow promotions, the gossiping colleagues, his wife's boss who commanded respect everywhere he went. What if this was the chance to prove himself? Over the next few days, Osagi kept in touch. He would call at odd hours, always cheerful, always hinting at better things ahead. Eventually, he invited Esosa to visit his home. When Esosa arrived, he was stunned. The mansion in Etete was like something out of a magazine. 2 floors, marble tiles, exotic plants, even a small swimming pool glittering in the sun. Osagi welcomed him warmly, dressed in a silk robe. You see, my brother, this life is not for special people. It's for bold people. He led Esosa into a private room. Inside, there were symbols painted on the walls and a faint scent of incense in the air. At the center stood a small altar, a black bowl filled with palm oil and feathers. This, Osagi said softly, is where it all began. Esosa, Osagi continued, you've always been a good man, but you let fear hold you back. Igbesu doesn't deal with cowards. It rewards those who are willing to sacrifice for success. Esosa hesitated. Sacrifice? You mean human sacrifice? Osagi laughed. Ah, you watch too many Nollywood films. No one will ask you to kill anybody, at least not at the beginning. The Igbesu god decides what each man must give. Some give blood, some give loyalty, some even give time. The room suddenly felt cold. Esosa wanted to walk out, but then he remembered his wife, her beauty, her laughter, her loyalty, and how, despite all that, he still felt lesser. What if I join, he asked quietly, and the god chooses wrongly for me? Osagi smiled knowingly. Then you'll live with what you deserve. But trust me, once you taste the power, you won't care. He pulled out a small black card from his pocket. The card bore a golden serpent coiled around a flame. Tomorrow night, Osagi said, there will be a gathering. If you truly want your life to change, come. But once you enter, there's no going back. That night, Esosa couldn't sleep. The name Igbesu echoed in his mind. His thoughts wrestled with fear and temptation. He looked at his sleeping wife and whispered bitterly, "You'll see, Isoke. I'll show you I'm not a small man. You'll respect me outside." Thunder rolled over Benin's dark skies, as though warning him of the path he was about to take. But Esosa didn't listen. He had already made up his mind. The night air in Benin City carried a strange stillness, heavy, almost electric. Esosa stood before his mirror, staring at his reflection. His eyes looked sunken, restless, haunted by curiosity and fear. He had told Isoke he was working late at the office, but in truth, he was preparing to take a step that would change his life forever. He wore a black shirt, black trousers, and dark shoes, just as Osagi had instructed. No jewelry, no bright colors, no fear, Osagi had said over the phone earlier that day. Fear. That was easier said than done. As the wall clock ticked toward midnight, Esosa felt a tightening in his chest. He looked once more at his wife's picture on the wall, her smile, her innocence, and felt a pang of guilt. But his desire for wealth, power, and respect overpowered every shred of doubt. He stepped outside, locked the door quietly, and made his way down the dimly lit street. Osagi's black SUV waited at the corner, engine idling. The headlights flickered twice, a silent signal. When Esosa got in, he noticed 3 other men in the back seat, all dressed in black. None of them spoke. As the car drove through the silent streets, Esosa's heart pounded like a drum. He wanted to ask where they were going, but the look on Osagi's face silenced him. They drove past Ring Road, through the outskirts, until the city lights began to fade. The road turned narrow, flanked by thick trees. The only sounds were the crunch of tires and the rhythmic chirping of night insects. Finally, the SUV stopped before a large iron gate. 2 men dressed in black robes stood guard. Without a word, they opened the gate, and the car rolled into a vast compound. At the center stood an old colonial-style mansion, its walls covered in dark ivy. A large symbol, a serpent coiled around a flame, was painted above the doorway, the same symbol from Osagi's black card. As they stepped out of the car, a deep, echoing drum began to play somewhere inside the mansion. Each beat vibrated through Esosa's chest. Inside, the hall was dimly lit by torches mounted on the walls. The air smelled of incense and something metallic, perhaps blood. A group of men, about 12 in number, stood in a circle around a large wooden altar. They wore red and black robes, and their faces were hidden behind carved wooden masks. Esosa's knees felt weak, but Osagi placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Be strong. You're among brothers now." From the far end of the hall, a tall figure stepped forward. His robe was pure black with golden embroidery. His mask was different from the rest, polished and fierce, shaped like the face of a serpent. The drumming stopped. A heavy silence filled the hall. Osagi bent slightly and whispered, "That's the Grand Master. Do not look him in the eye until you're told." The Grand Master's voice echoed like thunder. "Who brings the new soul to the circle of Igbesu?" Osagi stepped forward. "I, Osagi, son of Okuo, bring this man, Esosa, son of Idabiri, to the flame of Igbesu." "Step forward, Esosa," the Grand Master commanded. Esosa's legs trembled as he moved toward the altar. As he knelt before the Grand Master, the man removed his mask slowly. Esosa froze. His eyes widened in disbelief. His breath caught in his throat. It was the local government chairman, the same man he had accused his wife Isoke of sleeping with. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Esosa's mind went blank. He wanted to run, to scream, to disappear. But the circle of masked men surrounded him like shadows, silent, motionless, waiting. Osagi whispered urgently, "Bow your head, brother. You're in the presence of power." Esosa swallowed hard and bowed. His heart felt like it was splitting in two. The chairman walked around him slowly, his voice calm yet menacing. "You seek wealth, power, and influence, yes?" "Yes, Grand Master," Esosa managed to say. The chairman smiled again. "Then you must give something in return." The Igbesu spirit does not bless the greedy. It tests the willing. He leaned closer until Esosa could feel his breath on his ear. "Will you prove your loyalty to the flame?" Esosa nodded, though his mind screamed no. The Grand Master lifted a golden dagger from the altar. The blade shimmered under the torchlight. He drew a line across Esosa's palm, just deep enough to draw blood. Then he dipped his own finger into the wound and smeared the blood on Esosa's forehead. "With this mark," he intoned, "you are bound to Igbesu. Your soul is seen. Your desires are known. Your fate is no longer yours alone." The other members chanted softly in a strange language. Their voices rose and fell like waves, filling the hall with eerie energy. The Grand Master continued, "In 3 days the Spirit will assign you your task. Complete it, and your wish shall be granted. Fail, and you shall become dust in the wind." Then he smiled wickedly. "And remember, Esosa, nothing stays hidden from the Igbesu. Not even your thoughts." When the ceremony ended, Osagi led Esosa outside. The night air hit his face like a slap, but it did nothing to calm him. He could barely speak. His hands shook as they drove back to the city. In his mind, one image replayed over and over, the Grand Master's face, his wife's boss. How could fate be so cruel? Osagi glanced at him. "You should be proud, brother. Few men are chosen to see the Grand Master in their initiation. That means the Spirit has special plans for you." But Esosa wasn't proud. He was terrified. He thought of Isoke, of all the accusations, the fights, the nights he had accused her of sleeping with the chairman. And now, here he was, spiritually bound to that same man, the man who held his destiny in his hands. The irony burned like fire in his chest. As he stepped into his house later that night, Isoke stirred from sleep. "You're home late again," she murmured softly. Esosa forced a smile. "Yes, just office work." But deep inside, he knew the truth. He had just signed a contract with darkness. And the price had only begun to unfold. Hey fam, if you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, so you'll never miss another thrilling story like this one. Your support helps me keep bringing you real, emotional, and powerful stories every week. Now, let's get back to the drama. 3 nights after the initiation, Esosa's world began to unravel in ways he never imagined. The haunting chants from the Igbesu ceremony echoed in his dreams. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the Grand Master's face, his wife's boss, smiling that wicked smile. He'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, gasping for air. On the third night, as he drifted between sleep and wakefulness, a cold breeze swept through his room, even though the windows were shut. The air grew thick and heavy, and a deep voice whispered into his ear, "The time has come. The task must be fulfilled." He bolted upright, trembling. Isoke stirred beside him, half asleep. "Esosa, what's wrong?" "Nothing," he whispered, wiping the sweat from his forehead. But it was far from nothing. The whisper had felt real, like someone was in the room with them. He didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, he received a call from an unknown number. "Brother Esosa," the voice on the other end said, "the spirit has spoken. Report to the house of Igbesu at sunset. Come alone." Before Esosa could respond, the line went dead. His hands shook as he set the phone down. He knew this was it, the moment the Grand Master had promised, the task that would determine his fate. All through the day, he was restless at work. His pen slipped from his hand several times. His colleagues noticed but said nothing. Only Isoke's laughter from the nearby chairman's office rang through his head like a cruel reminder of everything that had driven him to this point. At sunset, Esosa arrived at the Igbesu temple. The torches were already lit, the air filled with the smell of burning herbs. The masked members stood in their circle once again. The Grand Master sat on the same high chair, his eyes cold and calculating. "Esosa," he began, "the spirit has chosen your task." Esosa's throat was dry. He managed a shaky nod. The Grand Master's smile was slow, deliberate. "To prove your loyalty to Igbesu, you must bring your wife, Isoke, to me. She must spend 3 nights with the Grand Master as an offering of purity and power." The words hit Esosa like thunder. His heart stopped. "What?" he gasped. The Grand Master leaned forward. "Your wife is beautiful, is she not? The spirit has chosen her. She must be consecrated to the flame. 3 nights, and your path to wealth will open." Esosa shook his head in disbelief. No, you can't mean that." Seiji stepped forward from the shadows. "Brother, this is not a request. The spirit does not speak twice. You accepted the oath. You must obey." "But that's my wife," Esosa cried, voice cracking. The Grand Master's expression turned dark. "Then choose your wife's dignity or your life. Igbesu accepts only obedience. Defiance means death." Esosa fell to his knees, trembling. His mind screamed, "No," but his mouth couldn't form the words. He looked at the circle of masked men, realizing none of them would help him, not even Osagie, his friend. He was alone. That night, Esosa couldn't think straight. He sat in his living room, staring blankly at the floor. Isoke tried to talk to him, but he barely responded. "Esosa, you're scaring me," she said gently. "What's going on with you these days?" He forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just work stress." But deep down, he knew the truth. He was trapped. If he refused the task, Igbesu would kill him. If he obeyed, he would lose his wife forever. Then a dark idea began to form in his mind. A terrible, desperate plan. He would make it look like they were kidnapped. That way he wouldn't have to explain anything to her. She would think it was all an accident. Maybe, just maybe, she would forgive him later. He called a contact Osagi had once mentioned, a man known for doing dirty work quietly. "I need a staged kidnap," Esosa whispered over the phone. "For me and my wife. No harm to her, no noise. Just make it look real." The man on the other end laughed coldly. "For the right price, anything can look real." 2 nights later, it happened. Esosa and Isoke were returning home from a church vigil when 2 masked men jumped out of a parked van, guns pointed, shouts, panic. "Don't move," one of the men barked. Isoke screamed, "Please don't hurt us." They were blindfolded, gagged, and shoved into the van. The entire scene lasted less than 5 minutes. When the blindfolds were finally removed, they were inside a dimly lit room, the same Igbesu hall Esosa had visited before, though Isoke didn't recognize it. The Grand Master stepped out from the shadows, dressed in his ceremonial robe. "Welcome," he said softly. "The offering has arrived." Isoke, still blindfolded, was in total confusion. "What? What's going on?" she stammered. Esosa's heart sank. He couldn't look at her. "My dear wife," he whispered, voice trembling, "please, just do whatever they ask. Don't let them kill us." Tears filled her eyes. But before she could say more, the guards took her away. For 3 nights the Grand Master and Isoke were shut away in a secret chamber. Esosa wasn't allowed to see her. He wandered the compound like a ghost, sick with guilt. Each night he heard the distant chants, the drumming and the strange cries echoing through the walls. He hated himself. He hated the greed that had brought him here. He hated the man who had taken his wife. But most of all, he hated that he couldn't stop it. On the morning of the 4th day, Isoke was released. She looked pale, broken, and distant. When she saw Esosa, her eyes were cold. She didn't speak a word as they were driven home. Inside their house, she turned to him and said in a hollow voice, "I'm sorry," tears rolling down her cheeks. Then she walked into their bedroom and shut the door. Esosa stood frozen in the middle of the room, tears streaming down his face. He had gained nothing, only shame, and the haunting feeling that the worst was yet to come. The morning after Isoke returned, silence became the loudest thing in the house. She moved around like a stranger, cold, distant, and mechanical. Her eyes no longer met Esosa's. Her laughter, once the melody that made their small house feel like a home, was gone. Esosa sat on the edge of their bed, head buried in his hands. He could barely eat, barely speak. The image of his wife walking away from him in that occult mansion replayed over and over in his mind. He had done the unthinkable, betrayed the one person who truly loved him. And for what? The Grand Master had promised wealth and power, but days had passed and nothing changed. No miracles, no sudden riches, only the crushing weight of guilt and dread. He started to wonder if the spirit had rejected his offering. On the 7th night after the ritual, Esosa was once again summoned to the house of Igbesu. When he arrived, the mansion felt darker than before. The torches flickered as if struggling against an invisible wind. The chanting was slower, heavier. The Grand Master sat upon his golden seat, the serpent mask back on his face. "Sosa," he began, his voice deep and cold, "your offering has been accepted. The Igbesu spirit has chosen your portion." Esosa's heart leapt. Finally, he thought. After everything he had endured, maybe, just maybe, it would be worth it. The Grand Master continued, "3 paths lie before every initiate: wealth, power, or longevity. The spirit decides which to grant. You cannot choose." Esosa held his breath. The Grand Master closed his eyes and began to chant in a deep, guttural voice. The room trembled. A low hum filled the air as the torches dimmed. When he opened his eyes again, they glowed faintly red. "The spirit has spoken," he declared. "Esosa Edebiri, your portion is longevity." At first, Esosa thought he had misheard. "Longevity," he whispered. "What of wealth? What of prosperity?" The Grand Master smirked beneath his mask. "The spirit gives as it pleases. You shall live longer than most men. That is your blessing." Esosa's chest tightened. "But that's not what I wanted. I did everything you asked." He fell to his knees, voice shaking with desperation. "I brought my wife. I sacrificed my peace, my marriage. Please, Grand Master, beg the spirit to change it." The Grand Master's smile vanished. "Do not question the will of Igbesu." The spirit does not negotiate with mortals. Oseji stepped forward, resting a hand on his shoulder. Brother, longevity is a gift. Think about it. You'll live long enough to rebuild everything you've lost. But Esosa's heart was filled with rage and disappointment. Longevity without wealth meant living longer in suffering. What kind of reward was that? He had traded his wife's dignity for a curse disguised as a blessing. That night, Esosa returned home a broken man. He didn't speak to Isoke. He simply sat in the dark, staring at the wall, replaying the Grandmaster's words. Longevity. You will live long. He laughed bitterly. Live long for what? To suffer. To remember what I've done. Isoke walked past him without a word, clutching her Bible. He wanted to speak, to apologize, but the words refused to come. His wife must not know it was all his plot. Days turned into weeks, and strange things began to happen. Esosa stopped sleeping. When he closed his eyes, he saw faces, masked men chanting, shadows whispering. Sometimes he saw the Grandmaster's serpent eyes glaring at him through the darkness. And sometimes he heard his wife crying softly at night, her sobs muffled beneath the blanket. Every sound tore at his soul. He had gained nothing but torment. A month later, unable to bear the weight of his guilt, Esosa returned to the house of Igbesu. He stormed into the hall, ignoring the guards, and fell to his knees before the Grandmaster. Please, he cried, let me do another task, anything. I don't want longevity. Give me wealth, power, something real. The Grandmaster regarded him silently for a long moment, then laughed softly. You are indeed desperate, Esosa. The spirit rarely entertains second chances, but your persistence amuses me. He leaned forward. If you desire a new portion, you must perform a new task. A greater one. Are you prepared for that? Esosa nodded without hesitation. Yes, anything. Just give me what I came for. The Grandmaster's smile widened. Then hear this. To receive wealth, you must offer the purest blood that belongs to you. Your own seed. Esosa frowned. My seed. The spirit requires the life of your only child, the Grandmaster said calmly. Sacrifice your son, and your wealth shall overflow. The words hit Esosa like lightning. He staggered backward. No, not my child. You can't be serious. The Grandmaster's tone turned sharp. Every man pays his price, some with blood, some with loyalty. You begged for this. Now prove your devotion. Esosa stumbled out of the mansion that night, like a madman. His vision blurred with tears. His head throbbed. The world seemed to tilt around him. He couldn't imagine hurting his son, his only child, the boy who ran to hug him every evening shouting, "Daddy's home!" He couldn't. For days he avoided sleep, avoided home, avoided everyone. He wandered aimlessly through Benin's streets, muttering to himself, haunted by the Grandmaster's words. At night, when he finally closed his eyes, he dreamed of his son standing before him, smiling, innocent, and a dark voice whispering, "Bring him to the flame." He would wake up screaming. Isoke became terrified of him. She saw the madness in his eyes. One evening, she locked their bedroom door and prayed loudly, tears streaming down her face. God, whatever evil hunting my husband, deliver this house. Her cries pierced through Esosa like knives. He wanted to confess, to tell her everything, but he couldn't. The Igbesu oath bound his tongue. Every time he tried to speak, a choking sensation gripped his throat until he could barely breathe. Weeks passed and the torment only grew worse. Objects moved in the house on their own. Shadows whispered his name. At night, he would feel invisible hands tugging at his feet, dragging him toward the door. He grew thinner, his eyes sunken, his skin pale. The neighbors whispered that Esosa had gone mad, But no one knew the truth. He was fighting a war between the spirit he had summoned and the humanity he had betrayed. The Igbesu god had marked him, and until he fulfilled the new task or died trying, he would never know peace. Haunted by guilt and the relentless voice of the Igbesu spirit, Mr. Esosa finally broke. The torment had become unbearable. Every night, shadows whispered his name, demanding he fulfill the second task, to sacrifice his only son. He tried to resist, but the spirit's grip tightened around his mind until he could no longer tell reality from nightmare. One night, while his wife Esosa was away, Esosa gave in. Through tears and trembling hands, he took the life of his innocent boy, believing that only blood could buy him peace and the wealth he had been promised. When the deed was done, silence fell, cold, heavy, and final. At dawn, he buried his son behind their home, whispering to the soil, "Now keep your promise." That evening, he returned to the Igbesu mansion. The Grandmaster, his wife's boss, and the occult leader smiled darkly as the spirit's decision was revealed once again. Esosa's breath caught. The spirit had chosen longevity, the same cruel gift as before. No wealth, no power, only the curse of living long with the memories of his sins. Crushed by despair, he realized the spirit had never meant to bless him. It had only marked him for endless torment. He returned home, broken and hollow, haunted by the laughter of the son he had buried. In the early hours of dawn, Esosa made his final choice. He tied a rope to the ceiling beam, kissed his family's photo, and whispered, "Igbesu can keep its curse. I'm done living for demons." As he took his last breath, the curse was broken. Before his death, he left a note for his wife, confessing his sins and asking for forgiveness, but she never forgave him. Insecurity can turn love into fear, and greed can turn dreams into nightmares. Mr. Esosa's downfall began the moment he stopped trusting love and started chasing validation through wealth and power. He wanted to prove his worth to the world, but in doing so, he lost everything that truly mattered. So ask yourself, how far would you go to silence your insecurities or satisfy your desires? Not every door that promises riches leads to fortune. Some open straight into darkness. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs reminding that peace of mind is worth more than power. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real, gripping stories that uncover the hidden sides of human choices.